I think we had someone else join us.
A few more join.
Yeah, I see Patrice. Hi, Patrice. And okay, I think we'll get started and do our quick introductions. These are not formal webinars. They're, as we've called them, they're community meetings where we get together and provide insights and share conversations. These are meant to be leadership conversations. So welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us. This is the first of the series that we're hosting here at the George Washington University Center for Excellence in Public Leadership. My name is Ina Gikondi, and I'm the Director for Executive Education and Coaching. With me today is my colleague Katerina Pietbratova, who's our Director of Marketing and Business Development. We also have Samantha Henry with us, who's our financial manager of the center. So hi, Samantha. And several of our faculty, I think, have joined. We're really excited to start these series. You know, we're as we know, we're in the midst of a very interesting time in our lives. And we really wanted to come up with some kind of opportunity where together we could have spaces to have conversations. So we call this initiative Co-VITA, which is really vita in Latin means life, and we are looking at it as a way, how do we mobilize life together? The co means together. And so part of this series we're going to be hosting every day now. We'll have about one every 1 hour, primarily this hour 1 to 2, so you can join again tomorrow if you want. We have different things, different offerings. But today we will be focusing on the power of perspective. And this session is facilitated by one of our faculty and coaches, Vinay Kumar. Thank you, Vinay, for being with us, and thank you for stepping in so quickly. We've really mobilized quickly and tried to put things together as fast as possible to be of service. Vinay has been in the leadership field now for over 35 years. He's been a leader in organization, and he's been also working with organizations worldwide, from the corporate spectrum to the nonprofit spectrum to the government space. He's worked with 500 companies, top 500 companies. He's worked with government agencies, and he's got really a wealth of experience. He's also an author, and his book of Language and Pursuit of Leadership Excellence, How Extraordinary Leaders Build Relationships, Shape Culture, and Drive Breakthrough Results, has been featured and is being used in a lot of organizations and universities all over the world. With that, we're really excited, Vinay, to have you with us. And I will just say one more logistical point before I just bring it back and have you get us started. I'd invite everyone once more to get on the video if you can. Again, this is designed to be a conversation. Vinay does have some slides, but I know there's going to be ways for us to have to talk to each other. And also, if anything or questions are coming up for you, put them on the chat, and both Katerina and I will be monitoring, and then we'll be weaving them in the conversation and getting Vinay's attention so that we can loop you in. And also, if something really feels you need to speak at that moment, unmute yourself and please do so, because again, this is not a lecture, it's a conversation. Okay, with that, Vinay, I'll just turn it back to you, and welcome.
Thank you, Ina. Thank you, Katerina and Samantha. Thank you for having me. And looking forward to being in this conversation. My goal is to just share a couple nuggets that can help us get through these times and also beyond. And it's designed as somewhat of a conversation, somewhat of a workshop format. So let's experiment. Let's move forward and see what we can get from the process there. So a lot of us, at this point in time, particularly are feeling anxiety, a lot of worry and fear, and they're asking, they're feeling stuck. They're saying, "What more do I do, given what's happening?" Just can't see everybody, but maybe a show of hands or type in. How many of you are feeling that way at this point in time? You know, just wondering, what more do I do at this point in time, and all this anxiety that we're feeling. And my goal is to take a look at what fuels this anxiety, and how do we work with it, and how do we get unstuck so we can begin to move forward and create the future that we all are aiming to create. That's my purpose in this session here today. With that, I'm going to run through 3 activities very briefly. As I do that, I want you to be thinking about what's the lesson is presenting, what's the insight, and what's the connection to feeling anxious and then perhaps feeling unanxious and feeling more grounded. And if we're feeling stuck, how can we leverage this? What's the learning is being presented that can help us get unstuck, right? Because if we can understand how we got to where we are, then we can find a way out of it and get back into creating what we want to create, okay? So the first activity is an image I'm going to present to you for about 15 seconds. And I want you to take a look at, write down everything that you notice in that particular image. Again, you'll have 15 seconds. I'm going to take the image away and take a look at and see what all do you notice in that particular image. And then type in your chat box, what all do you see? Okay, here we go. So pay attention. Okay, so let's ask, type in your chat box, okay? Horse, a bird, and a crab. How about others? What did you see? A skull, lizard, rabbit, cardinal, eagle, a face. Others, what do you see in here? Eye, eyebrow, woman's face. Okay. Others, what do you see in this image that we all just saw? A beach. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? It's interesting. We all looked at the same thing, I believe. You look at the diversity of what we saw. So think about what lesson is that presenting here. Okay. Let's go on. Next activity is going to be, I'm going to read you a short story. And I want you, there's a series of 11 statements. What I'm asking you to do is, based on the story, just which are the statements that are true? Only the ones that are true. And I'm going to ask you to type those numbers into the chat box. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to read the story to you first. The story is the following. A businessman had just turned off the lights in the store when a man appeared and demanded money. The owner opened a cash register. The contents of the cash register were scooped up and the man sped away. A member of the police force was notified promptly. Okay, so here's the statements. What I'm looking for is, based on the story you heard, which of these statements would you say are true? We have time, so take your time. And if anyone would like for me to reread the story, just say yes in the chat box. I'm happy to do so. Okay. Okay, so we have Allison saying number 5 is true. Okay, how about others? So how about if I read the story one more time, which often comes up, people say, can you read it again? A businessman had just turned off the lights in the store when a man appeared and demanded money. The owner opened a cash register. The contents of the cash register were scooped up and the man sped away, and a member of the police force was notified promptly. So, in addition to which are true, think about which are false statements, right? And which ones we're not sure how to mark them, if it's true, false, or question. So Allison says 5 is true. Gail says 1, 2, and 5. Okay. Others, what do you see? 2 and 5. You don't know which are false. You don't have enough information. Not sure. Okay. Let's hear from some more folks here. Which of these are true? 7. Daphne says 7. And 5. One, two. Samantha says 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. Now I'm questioning if they are true. How many others may be feeling that way right now? Maybe wondering if they're really true or false. The cash register may not have contained money, right? Maybe it was something else. How many of you thought it was maybe a robbery going on here? Anybody have that perception or thought? Yes, maybe. That's interesting. We're all hearing the same thing, right? But we have different responses. How is this possible? We even heard it twice. Yes, thought it was a robbery, right, Katrina? Yeah. What else is going? What else are you? It's interesting. We all heard the same thing. The sound waves, my tone, my pace of talking and speaking, my volume was pretty much about the same, I believe. And yet the sound waves hit our drums, and yet we're getting a range of responses. How is this possible? And what's that got to do with sense of anxiety and feeling stuck? But think about this. What's the learning that's being presented? We'll come back to this. Let's do another activity here. In our world with online shopping, we are getting inundated with boxes. How many of you are experiencing this with Amazon and other online shopping? So that we can throw them away, and which fills up a lot of landfill. But we've been hired for a project saying, what else can you do with these boxes rather than just throw them away? So think individually for about a couple of minutes. What else can we do with them? What else? Is there something what can we do with these boxes? What comes in your mind, in your thoughts? So we have creative play, toys for kids. What else we can do for pets? We sell them. We have a business person here. Samantha, you're in finance. Pack things, build robots, home storage, recycle. Samantha moves a lot. So you know about boxes. Other uses, what else could we do with these boxes? I wish. Allison, say more about that. Go to another dimension, how I wish. What is that? Okay, I see, never mind. Okay, I'm a little slow sometimes, guys. Yeah.
Commenting on someone else's is just
Yeah, you can just say something too.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just being facetious. I wish I could get into it and time travel or go somewhere else right now.
Oh, I hear you, Allison. Yeah. What else can we do? What else comes to mind? So let's have a conversation. We did 3 activities about, we're looking at an image, we heard a story, and we came up with this idea of these different things we can do with this thing that we're seeing called boxes. So what insights are you getting from this, and what's the possible connection? You're feeling anxious or feeling stuck. You can either type in or we can have a conversation. I would love to have a conversation. What insights, what lessons are being presented through these very basic activities?
I think there's always more than one way to look at things. It's about coming up with a different possibility. We are having to do social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
What positives can we get out of that? How can we be more intentional about how we go through our day?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very beautiful. What other thoughts come in your from others here? What lessons are being presented, and what's the connection?
I think everyone hears the message differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so our interpretation of the events, what the box looked like, or what we saw in the picture, are what our past experiences and whatever formulate, and that's what then transcends to our responses back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all have we have our biases as human beings. We listen for certain things, and we don't capture certain things based on what we know, based on our beliefs and values, and so on. Yeah, yeah. Other insights. We can build on each other's insights and see what else emerges.
So I think it also has to do with the state of mind we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Those biases change because I think, just for me personally, I think I would have felt different last week than I do this week, because last week was more stressful for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I work from home all the time, so working from home isn't hard for me. But just some events last week, the unknown was more stressful. This week, I think I feel differently. So I think I responded to your questions, what I saw, and the interpretation of the story.
Mm-hmm.
This week was very different than it would have been last week.
Yeah, that's such a great point, right? Because like our emotional state, our mood state, our state of mind determines how we look at something. We use an example, for example, let's say I got a flat tire, and right before that event, I had a great day, and it was a great day in terms of client work. Lots of good things were happening, and I may deal with that flat tire in one way, as opposed to it was a really bad day and things just weren't going well, and here's just another event. Do I respond to that event the same way if I versus I had a great day, right? So our moods, our emotions have a great impact on how we look at things and how we interpret them. Our state of mind, as you called it, is so powerful. And oftentimes, how aware are we, or do we make conclusions and make interpretations, and we react as opposed to respond? Yeah. Yeah, other insights, and what's the connection? Love to hear from more people here. Anybody else? Yeah. To me,
And just a quote that I thought I mean, it kind of speaks to what we're looking at. It's, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. From Wayne Dyer. So, which goes back to the perspective. You know, it's about our way of being, our way of experiencing. And you know, when you look at that box, how many possibilities, it's, you know, what you look at, it's a box. It's a plain box, but what the possibilities of being and doing in relation to that box are endless from an individual perspective, and that will shift depending on the mood and the state of mind, and that will shift from person to person. as well. So our way of connecting and being with something will also speak to our way of engaging and being in the world.
Yeah, so true. And I've done this activity in different parts of the world, and what I find is different folks in different countries respond to that activity differently. For example, I was in South Africa not too long ago, did this activity, and the people said, well, we can use this as a, where you raise chickens and put them where the chickens are. And when they poop on the boxes, we can turn them into pellets to make fertilizer out of it. I've not heard that in this place in Washington, anyone raised that idea, but in that place, in that part of the world, that idea came up, and this is how innovation happens. This is how we generate new possibilities, and new businesses begin to take shape. Depends on what we see, what we can create. So it's very important. To me, this is one of my images I use a lot, is it's really important to understand that we all live in what we call an interpretive world. We don't see the world the way it is, we see the world as we are. And the way we see things is a reflection of what more about us than what's out there. So we say events do not equal explanation. There's the event that is occurring, and there's my view of the event. In this particular picture, for example, it could be, this is assuming two sisters, it could be two brothers, two friends, it doesn't matter. But if you look at let's call the sister on the left-hand side, well, I don't know exactly what she's thinking, but can you predict what her thoughts might be and how this person might respond, how this person is showing up? Versus look at the sister on the right-hand side that is the same dress, but look at her interpretation. Now, look at her mood space. Now, can you predict the kind of action each of these sisters will take? What they're feeling, what they will say, how they will say it, how they will show up, and what they will produce? So is it the dress, or is it each of their own perspectives? Right? There's a fact of the situation. Even today, there's a fact of whatever is going on in our world. And there's my interpretation of it. There's your interpretation. There's our interpretation. And how we look at it matters a great deal. I use this example oftentimes in my workshops. Let's say, for example, you have a best friend named John and someone you can't stand named Jane. And on Sunday night, you share all your deepest and darkest secrets with John. You're in one of those mood spaces, you share everything. Next day you come into the office and you see Jane and John talking. And they see you coming and they go really quiet. You walk in, you say hello to each other, but you think you should not be there. You turn around, you leave, and you hear laughter. Ha, ha, ha. What's going through your mind? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What would you be thinking and feeling in that situation? Anyone? Are they talking about me? Right? That's the number one response I get wherever I go. What else could be happening? What would others be thinking and feeling at that moment in time? What would you be feeling at that point? What emotions would be coming up? What did I do? Betrayal, right? Let's say I feel betrayed, and later on I see John coming towards me. What do? How do I respond? Anxious, right? Other feelings.
Can we invite everybody also to speak, not just in the chat, if you guys want to share? So it's yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ina. Feeling left out. How about you can chime in too?
Yeah, feeling a bit insecure if that happens.
Right? Insecure, anxious, insecure, left out. And let's say, or betrayed, those are strong words, right? Let's say now we see John later on coming towards us. How do we respond to John? Do we move towards him or do we move away? Right? We're often not aware of this fact. So what actually happened back there? If there was a camera in the room, what were the facts of the situation that you would agree with? What were the facts? We heard laughter. Would that be a fact? When you walked in, they went quiet. Would that be a fact? What are the other facts of the situation in this event? And these emotions that are coming up, betrayal and anxiety and insecurity, where are they coming from? Is there some internal dialogue going on in your mind? What are we thinking at that point in time? Are we feeling certain sensations in our body?
If you're coming from insecurity, you'd probably be hesitant when you're talking to John later. That's my thought.
Was someone else speaking? Thank you, Samantha. Sorry, that's the hard part about this Zoom, but that's okay.
Well, as we said earlier, looking for social clues and past references, experiences to what may have triggered that response.
Yeah, there might be a history here, right? So idea is that we're all unique observers. We all look at the world uniquely based on the way we're wired. It's a combination of our body, our internal language, our beliefs and values, and what things that we know or don't know, and our moods and emotions. This is the grand illusion that says everyone sees things the same way. That is not true, right? And the problem with the grand illusion is we tend to ascribe ill intent. If someone sees things differently than we do, we think they're wrong because we want to be right. But reality is all perspectives are valid, but not equally powerful. It's just a perspective. And we all see the same thing because we look with our eyes, but we see it very differently, as we saw in these examples. And this is a very big learning for many of, at least it was for me when I was growing up. I used to think the way I see things is the way things are. I didn't know that the way I see things is a reflection of me, not the way things are. And that opened up a whole lot of things. And the idea here being that the results we produce are a function of the actions that we take. But the actions themselves that we take is a function of the observer that we are, meaning how I choose to see things. It's not even how I choose to see it, it's how I see it. And the way I see things, I think that's the way it is. And from that place, I respond and I take action. And oftentimes it's more of a reaction rather than a purposeful action. And from that action, we create things. So if we're not getting the results we want, if we're feeling anxious, we're feeling stuck, we're not sure what to do, maybe instead of just trying to do something different, we can ask ourselves, what might be another way to look at the situation? Is there a different way of framing it?
So, Vinay, I'm curious how people maybe in the group here are experiencing this question right now as we're looking at the current situation, how people are feeling and how are we, I ask this question of myself too. How do I choose to look at today, this day, and it shifts every moment? And how am I able to come back to that? Like, what's the practice of coming back to, okay, I can understand the anxiety of in my system. What am I willing to look at it in this given moment? How am I willing to look at the situation that presents itself? So I wonder how people here are feeling, and how are you all coping with what's coming up? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah. Chime in, and you can type or you can just voice it out.
Yeah, voicing it out would be great, because I think the good opportunity we have here is that we can hear each other, and yes, chat is also an option too.
Hi, Ina, this is Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl. Yeah.
So I mentioned I'm actually feeling better this week. Last week was my more stressful week. But I think there's a couple things that I've done this week that have been good for me. I've started figuring out every morning, blocking some time to do something not related to the current situation. either, exercise, or this morning I actually finally planted some tomato plants that I've been meaning to plant forever. But just like blocking time every morning to distance myself, because I think I like this graph, Vinay, because I think one of the things that was making me so anxious last week is that I was getting information so quickly that was different. And I was trying to react to every piece of information that was coming, which meant I felt like I was a ping pong ball, because every time I get information, I bounced in a different direction. And so kind of blocking that time every day slowed down the amount of information I was getting, because I just I spend some time ignoring outside information. And that has given me some more calm time.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Sometimes just blocking it out or doing some gardening or doing something else is a wonderful place to be and wonderful things to do. This also shifts mood. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Vinay, I had someone, called in. No, someone who couldn't hear. I don't know your name. I see you with the NGOC tram.
It's not tram.
Yeah. Okay. It might be helpful to call in if you can't hear the video or the audio. Yeah.
Thank you.
And there was another comment, Vinay, earlier. Luzette said every day is a choice. And then Jacqueline Rodriguez says, feeling left out and ignored, watching my favorite TV shows and eating, enjoying spending more time with my dog, reading positive articles and books. I'm looking at, there was, and Samantha is saying that she signed up for Yale's happiness class. She's exercising, organizing her house, trying to remind myself that all is well. We're okay.
Yeah.
So can I add something? I think it's also important to recognize that everything's not okay. I posted something the other day on social media that this is something unprecedented and nobody is equipped to deal with it. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that, we're okay health-wise or whatever the case might be, but there's a lot of people, and I put myself in this category, who are not feeling okay. I have elderly parents who are in a different state and trying to figure out whether they should go home to New York or not. And of course, New York is the epicenter of all of this, and a huge amount of stress because it's out of my control. I don't remember who, I think it was Cheryl, said this week is better than last week. I have the opposite experience, because this week we found out that schools are closed through the end of the academic year. So now, instead of 3 weeks of homeschooling, I'm faced with the prospect of an entire 3 more months of homeschooling while trying to work with everybody home. So, I think I read an article from the Harvard Business Review about how this actually equates to stages of grief. And I think, did you guys read that one?
Yeah.
And I think it's it was the one article that I read that I didn't want to just like rip up and throw in the trash, because I feel like, when I see people doing all these wonderful productive things, I'm not there yet. And a lot of people aren't there yet. And a lot of people we work with and a lot of our clients and a lot of our colleagues are not there yet. And we're struggling and we're grieving and everything feels out of control. So I think it's great to try to do some of these things and shift perspective, but I think there's also this recognition that it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's all feelings and all emotions are valid and they're welcomed. If that's where we are, that's where we are. There's no right or wrong here. We accept it, and sometimes to me there's a place just to be at the moment in time. Not ready to move forward yet, and that's okay. It's okay. Absolutely.
But yeah, I also want to say something about it. I think, Allison, it was you who was speaking, right?
Yeah, that was.
Yes. Okay. I think it's really important to recognize the pain that we're in right now, and making it okay doesn't mean that we're riding right through it and saying that, yes, we're okay. making it okay is to actually feel into it and recognize it. So I do agree with you. And that article, for anyone who has not read it, I also found it very helpful. This comes from David Kessler's work on the stages of grief. Really good way of understanding what we're going on through right now as a global collective, which is grief.
I just chatted it into the box.
Great. And what is important, I think, is to connect it a little bit with the power of perspective, or us as observers, is to recognize that we're in it, to stay with it, and to find anchors and ways that we can come back to our center, back to our way of holding it together, and so that we can stay well, to know when to shift. And the other thing I'll say here that I have found is, we're trying to do so much right now to go into this centering mode and being well and how to stay well. And what we also need to realize that for many of us who haven't had practices of these kind before this all hit us, it's harder. It's really harder, and we need to accept it. It's like we're thrown into the little kids are thrown into the swimming day one, and they just don't know what to do and how to do it. So I think we also have to learn to be compassionate with ourselves, and to take it in a day at a time. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Vinay, I'll turn it back to you, but I think you made a really important point, Allison.
I can share with you how this helps me. I know there are times for me also anxiety kicks in, and the fear and the worry, all these things come in. And because of this way of being, I'm so aware of it, I begin to pay attention to my body sensations. And I'll go for a walk, or I'll just close my eyes and I'll just sit and take some deep breaths. Then I'll go inside my head and say, what am I saying to myself that's generating all this anxiety or fear or worry? And then I'll ask myself, is there another way I could take a look at it when I'm ready, right? And oftentimes shifting that perspective and saying, is there an opportunity that's being presented? Is there a lesson for me to be learned from this experience? Somehow helps me shift and move forward. So this is how I've been applying these tools to myself. Again, paying attention to body sensations, paying attention to my emotions, and paying attention to what's my self-talk. And sometimes as human beings, our self-talk it's very natural for it to go towards worst case scenarios. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. But when I'm aware of my self-talk, it doesn't have me, I have it. And I can make that choice to shift out of it at some point. Okay. So this again, this type of perspective we were talking about, we look with our eyes, but we see with our minds. We hear with our ears the story, but we listen with our minds. What the mind does not know, the eyes don't see. And the ears don't listen, and that's how we get stuck sometimes. Because what happens is human beings, we all have certain knowledge, and we don't have certain knowledge. And we're always filtering in some information, and there's a whole lot of information that's getting filtered out. As we saw in the story, the quotes bank robber story, right? We make assumptions, we fill in the blanks, and we're not aware of it. And we so quickly and automatically we make meaning, we form interpretations. These words, interpretation, meaning, perspective, stories, they're all interchangeable. But we do this so automatically, and if we're not aware of it, our interpretation have us instead of us having them. And those interpretations generate all these body sensations and mood spaces, and vice versa. Causality is both ways. And the important thing here is that when we can see our interpretation as an interpretation, as a thought, as not the truth, then we can become free from it. Then we can say, what's the fact of the situation? How am I taking a look at it? And then I can ask the question, is there another way to look at this? Is there another way to experience the situation that I'm in at this point in time? And to me, that's a game changer. Because then the situation doesn't have me, I have the situation. The interpretation doesn't have me, I have the interpretation. When I have this awareness, then I can examine and bring different perspectives into the mix. And that's the part that is very powerful. Because that different interpretation opens up a whole different set of perspectives, different possibilities, and different ways of moving forward. And so the activity here, I think we touched on a little bit, is given the reality, what are we saying to ourselves? What is our self-talk? What is fact and what is our interpretations? The story doesn't mean fabrication. It just means what is my mind saying to me at this point in time? Is, for example, let's say I call my kids at night and I don't get a response on their cell phone. My mind is making all kinds of interpretations, and they're often worst case scenarios. When I didn't have this awareness, I would go into a real tizzy. But not consider, that's my mind making up an interpretation. Maybe something else is going on here. Vinay, just breathe. Maybe the cell phone ran out of battery. Maybe they forgot the cell phone. I can take control of myself as opposed to it taking control of me. It's a big learning, right? So with that, when we become aware, we can ask ourselves, given the reality today, are there other ways of experiencing it? Are there other ways of looking at it without making what we're experiencing wrong at the moment? No, we honor that. We lean into the feelings, we lean into the sensations, and we realize still there may be other ways of experiencing it. And sometimes I can't see myself, I can't reframe it, I can't see from a different lens because I have the lens that I have. And that's number 3, then this is conversation like this. Can we bring other perspectives into the mix here? Because we all will experience the same reality in very different ways. So how are others experiencing this current situation? And what other perspective might be helpful to us to move through this? Like one person said, I think I'm sitting back and asking myself, what's the blessing in this situation? What am I to learn from this situation that's being presented? That's his lens through which he's looking at it. How are others framing the situation? How are others looking at it? And how else could we look at it and experience it? We'd love to hear some thoughts. The reality is what the reality is. The situation is what the situation is. What other ways can we look at this and experience it? What comes up as you think about those 2 questions?
I saw a lot of mother-daughter and situations down the street when we went to go grocery shopping. People are taking walks with their family, and I think that with all the students home, that they'll get a lot more bonding with their parents that they normally wouldn't have had. This one perspective I've been thinking about.
Yeah, right. There's an opportunity I got presented here, which wouldn't have been there otherwise, perhaps, Samantha. Beautiful. I think someone else was speaking as well.
And the one thing that, and I was hearing Allison share this, I have a 7-year-old, so I think for the past 2 weeks we've been super bonding. And I think there's time, like as much as you want to look at the perspective or a new way of being, there comes a point where it's like, I just want you to go back to school already. So it's a hard shift. It is a really hard shift. And maybe that's why those stages of grief are interesting, because you go through it and maybe the beginning, it's a little more, it's harder, and then it becomes the new normal. But even in the beginning, and the way the situations have been changing and shifting, there's so much uncertainty. I can share that one of the things that has been really helpful to me, as much as I try to get my mind back in control through telling it, it just doesn't work for me. So I think, Vinay, you spoke to it a little earlier through the body. I do a belly breathing technique, as easy as it may sound. And right now, a lot what's going on is in our lungs area. In Chinese medicine, lungs are also about grief, and to think how this viruses attacking the lungs, which is also about I'm safe and well in the world. So it's interesting. And when you breathe from the belly area instead of from the upper chest area, there is a different kind of opening and flow in our system. So I would encourage people, and I'm going to try to find if there is a resource. This is something I've learned from my Qigong teacher, but I think if you just put your hands and you breathe into your belly as compared to breathing from your upper side of your body, I think could be really useful for that shift or perspective instead of telling yourself. That would be that's been my way of coping in some instances.
And that's a really important point. When we begin to breathe, then our blood begins to flow to our neocortex again. And then we can think with a more calm mind and a clearer mind. And then we can ask ourselves, how else can I experience? What can I do to make the best of the situation? I mean, I like the situation I'm in right now. And then can I accept it? And then can I work with it? And again, that's the notion of choice. Notion of choice. Yeah. Other thoughts? How are others framing the current situation or looking at it? That might help us, others.
Just to follow up on what others were saying, for me, this past week has been a huge reality check, and in a way put me face to face with my worst fears, but also very good things in my life. So just to share with others, over the weekend, my stepdad ended up in emergency room because he had respiratory issues. And at the time, of course, the first thought came to mind is it COVID? And I didn't feel ready to hear that news. And I felt extremely emotional and overreactive to it. Thankfully, it's just pneumonia, but he is recovering and has been given antibiotics. But to me, at those moments, I really, really started appreciating what time we have here with our loved ones. And on the opposite end of things, this has been a time that I had the pleasure and a blessing to reconnect with family and coach my nephew for his SAT exams that are coming up. So I'm tutoring him daily, and this has never really happened before, and there's a connection and a bond that's building. So both of these things have emerged as a reality in the last week for me. And what helped me is to have, in my way, I have my spiritual guides and my circle of trust and people that hold me through anything. And those are the people that I turn to when news come in.
Yeah, I think community becomes ever more important. Being together becomes even more important, and being your support points for each other. Yeah, life is a team sport. I always say we don't get through this life alone. We all help each other. We need each other. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other perspectives on this power of perspective before I move forward? Anything else people like to share? Anyone? Okay. So, for me, and I don't want to call this a problem, but I always think of this Einstein quote that we can't solve our situation or problems or whatever with the same thing we used to create them. Everything is created by thought. When we can change our thinking, new possibilities begin to emerge. And the notion of getting stuck, we all notice certain things, but there's a whole lot of things that we don't notice. If you imagine a complete reality, the things that we know that we don't know, there's a big piece that we don't even know what we don't even know. But collectively, we know so much more. And by bringing different perspectives, different thinkings together, we can see more of the situation and begin to see more ways of moving forward. You know, there's a quote I remember reading, none of us is as smart as all of us. We all have areas of brilliance. We have areas of ignorance. Ignorance meaning blind spot, things we don't know. But coming together, we can see so much more. And we can make better, we can make even, maybe make the most of the situation that perhaps we can't do on our own. Just because we don't see it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, which is a Thomas Edison quote. Just because I don't see a possibilities for getting unstuck and moving forward, but collectively by helping each other, we can see a way forward. There'll be a lot of learning that'll be emerging out of this situation. When we put our minds together, we'll learn from this experience that we can leverage to create even a better future going forward. You know, I was reading this book recently called, you know, Ray Dalio wrote a 600-page book, which I'm making my way through. He's also wrote a children's book, which I also read, which I like a lot. I think we learn a lot from children's books. I know I do. You know, he said the best way to go through the jungle of life is with people who see things differently than me. That's the notion of different. We experience the same situation differently. We see different things. So we become open-minded and we invite different perspectives. Again, we can learn so much from our situation and find ways of moving forward. The notion of getting unstuck. And we see a possibility, we can go from being anxious to being enthusiastic, to being curious, to having wonder, saying, that's interesting. I didn't see that possibility, but thank you for helping me see that. Like for me, one of the possibilities that emerges, you know, I tend to get up very early. These days, someone said, Vinay, why don't you sleep a little bit later? I said, oh, what a novel idea. I didn't think about that. So what a welcome, you know, again, different thing opened up, which I wasn't seeing, but someone else helped me see that. So seeing the gift and the reality of the today is just helping me get through it better. Yeah.
Just a reminder, Vinay, that we've got 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. You know,
yeah, good.
I'm curious, that was the main topic, that there is a reality and there's my reality, meaning how I choose to look at something, how I choose to experience it. When I become aware of that, then I can open myself up to other ways of looking at it. And to me, that's a gigantic, gigantic step. But oftentimes our reality has us, we don't have it. So I'm curious, as we have a little bit of time left, what was useful to you today? And how can you leverage this learning, given the situation we all find ourselves in, to create not just a better tomorrow, but also a better today? You can say it, you can type it. I'd love to hear from you. What are you taking from this session that you can use?
So Allison is saying, thank you for hosting today. Vinay, it was nice to see you virtually again. I need to jump to kick off a client call now. Okay, good.
Thank you. Good to see you, Allison. Others, what are you taking from this that you can use to create a better today and a better tomorrow for yourself and others around you? Any comments, any questions? Come up.
Hi, this is Lucette. For me, thank you so much. This was quite powerful. I think that for me, it relates to the power of connection. Just being here, looking at 18 people, sharing an experience and sharing from our hearts and our authentic selves makes me remember that, you know, there are so many perceptions, right? And Vinay, you guiding us through it, through the entire hour is very powerful, because it's not that I'm just going to do one thing that is going to make me feel great just now forever, but it's a process. It's a process of talking, of naming, of sharing, of being, and just sharing the human experience together. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
It's great. There's another comment from Daphne. She says, it's a great reminder that perspective can shift it if we're open. Breathing helps to gain clarity.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Anybody else? What was useful for you? I'll turn it over back to you,
Yeah.
and Katerina.
I loved what Luzette shared, that idea of, and Gail says something about thank you for reminding me of my self-talk, which always gets in the way. Yeah, we all got our stories in our head, the tape plays on, and we have to be getting more connected to that tape. So great. Vinay, thank you so much for hosting. And what I was connecting it to what Luzette shared about really just being in the space with others. I think this is the most important thing we can do right now. Our prompts are conversational prompts so that we can look at a topic, and there's so many ways and perspectives to look at things, but really to connect to our humanity is the most precious thing that we have with us right now. And Karima says that it was helpful, and she's pleased to know that I'm not alone in my thinking and what I'm experiencing related to this crisis. The power of community is real. What a beautiful way to end. The power of community is real. And that's our intention. We're planning to go on through through this month and April. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about integral practices for being well, integral well-being, powerful practices to feel well, with Luzette, who joined us today. So if you have time tomorrow, join us back at 1:00. Katerina will also be sharing this as a follow-up recording. Thank you to all of you for participating. Thank you again, Vinay, for sharing your heart and yourself with us today. So thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful day, and remember to come back to yourself and come back often.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.